afternoon. The Tamworth Sewage Augmentation Scheme is comprised of two main components. We have Part A, which is Westdale Wastewater Treatment Plant. The idea was to consolidate all our wastewater treatment at one plant, one facility, that was Westdale Wastewater Treatment Plant. So we increased that to 61,000 EP and closed down our Swan Street STP. The idea was to build a plant that would cater population growth through to 2025, and that gave us a design flow rate of 14.8 megalitres a day. We built primary, secondary and tertiary treatment. Primary treatment was in here, doing networks with mechanical screening and degridding. Secondary treatment process was for intermittently decanted aeration lagoons. And our primary treatment is in disinfection ponds for all flows, about 370 megalitres, and it gives us 25 days detention time. The second part of the scheme, Part B, was our effluent reuse farm. Our idea here was to use 100% of the city's effluent for a productive purpose. The farm itself is 1,500 hectares. It has 600 hectares under pivot irrigators, 13 centre pivot irrigators. We've got a farm down here, it's 1,500 megalitres. Surface area is about 30 hectares, it's about 5 metres deep. We've got a pump station in here, capital putting out 53 megalitres a day. All the associated infrastructure we need, the pipeworks, the road, the hard stands, the offices, and vegetated buffers around the whole site. The contract itself was a design, build and operate contract. The operation term is 10 years, so we have a contract with the farmer for 10 years. Total budget for the scheme was $80 million. At the outset, it was funded 50% state government, 50% local government. That was modified along the way to be about 14% state government and 86% local government. In terms of motivation for the two parts of the work, the wastewater treatment plant itself was just a standard infrastructure project. We needed something that was newer, that was bigger, and that was further away from the residential areas. But why a reuse farm? At the time we started the project, we were predicted to have load-based licensing costs of $800,000 a year. So not returning the effluent, the treated effluent to surface water, suddenly had a very real value for us. In addition, the costs associated with treating the effluent to sensitive waters criteria were significant, both in terms of capital and in terms of ongoing operational costs, and the reuse farm could help us avoid those costs. Once we decided to go to the reuse farm, that then influenced the type of infrastructure we put in at the wastewater treatment plant. Thirdly, there were concerns at that time over the new water reforms that were happening and the availability of water in the grand scheme of things. Also too, there was recognition amongst the community that the wastewater which we had paid for when we purchased it as surface water and brought it into our potable water supply was an asset of the city and an economic opportunity for the region. What barriers do we find in starting up the project? We had a lot of conflicting priorities in government areas. One of our best examples was the Department of Land and Water Conservation required us to put the water back in the river, but the EPA said it'll cost you $800,000 a year if you do that. So we did resolve that, but it took some time. Our downstream water users also wanted us to return the treated wastewater to the river, and they commenced a class action against council to prevent this project going ahead. Eventually they withdrew that class action, but it did cost us about 2 years in time for the project. The complex, expensive and lengthy approvals was an ordeal with requests for more and more studies along the way. In the end, we ended up with a large number of final approval documents, so many that complying with all the elements of all the documents through the process was quite difficult. And the last thing is a degree of expertise is needed to negotiate a pathway towards reuse. Regional areas have quite some difficulty in recruiting engineers and some difficulty in retaining them once they're trained. In terms of barriers we faced for the operation of the project, we we're still encountering problems with the integration of the requirements of different government agencies. For a relatively low-risk project, we had a huge monitoring requirement, and that is ongoing and an ongoing expense in the position. Also, we're also finding that the authorities are still not working well together. In our risk workshop for the New South Wales Office of Water, we had one other authority be very explicit about the fact that they were willing to participate, but in no way should their participation be construed as any form of approval. We had another key agency refuse to participate at all. So there's no real fit of the expectations between some of our authorities. Our EPA guidelines are not bad to use, they're quite easy to use, but they don't have the understanding of risk that the national guidelines have. In terms of technological issues, salt is one of our biggest issues. Often in regional areas, salt in the water we bring into our potable system is higher than other areas, so we start off sort of behind the eight ball. Local industries, they want to promote a greener image, and the communities welcome that, but they move towards technologies that leave council with a brine that's not compatible with the reuse fund. Also, you can see just from these little stats that salt levels, even if you just put it in the farm dam and leave it there for a little while, they creep up over time. Running the farm sustainably requires a degree of expertise, and it's often difficult for local government engineers to fit that science into their other duties as an engineer. In terms of the contract, we're dealing with different objectives. The farmer wants to maximise his profit, the council wants to use all the water, and that's not always a symbiotic relationship. What would have helped? At the outset of the project, there are many different entities with different goals, and they're each presenting different hurdles. It would be very good to have some imperative for these bodies to actually work together towards a positive outcome. As far as approvals go, the requirements that come from the approvals should be commensurate with the risk of the project. If you have a low-risk project, the monitoring and ongoing costs associated with that shouldn't be burdensome. Knowledge sharing, when we started along this path, we found that we started from scratch, we worked independently, and that's probably not the most efficient way that we can be working as an industry. Once again, the engineering skill shortage is a problem, particularly further out in Western councils, and particularly for smaller councils. And finally, limits on liability. A limit would be helpful. By way of illustration, we can take water out of our river to water our sporting fields, but if you want to do the same thing with effluent, even though our effluent is bacteriologically 10 times better, then it becomes a much more difficult proposition. Thank you.